You're listening to AMI Today on AMI Audio. It's Tuesday, July 15th, and I'm your host, Grant Hardy. I don't know about you, but I personally find the Buy Green movement for the environment, it's something I'm passionate about, but it's just so challenging, isn't it? I mean, as consumers, I feel like we're so kind of removed from our supply lines. There's such a separation between the supply line and the consumer that I kind of feel if you're anything like me, you have a couple things you really try and cut back on. Plastic bags, non-seasonal fruit, take transit instead of driving. But there's just so much knowledge and research to do to make sure every product we purchase is green, and that's what's really hard. Well, coming up today, Amy Amantea is got an article from The Walrus coming up that talks about a very important social staple, flowers, and how advocates are working to make those a little bit more green. It's coming up on the show today. In the second half of the show, we've got the Pulse. But right now, it's time for the AMI Audio Digest. Despite rhetoric from the White House, it is really important to remember that Americans are still our neighbors, and many of them still like us and want us around, especially if it's good for business. We've got Corinne Van Dusen here talking about the Globe and Mail, which airs on AMI Audio and at 10 a.m. Eastern, repeating every 6 hours. And Corinne, you've got a really interesting article talking about U.S. tourism and how they want us back.
Yes, Grant, it was the international article today titled "A County in Maine Looks for the Right Words to Tell Canadians How Much It Misses Them." It was written by Nathan Vanderclip. Apparently, new signs will greet Canadians if they're still crossing the border into northeastern Maine with the cheery bilingual message of "Bienvenue à nous, amis canadiens." So officials have taken care to ensure that maple leaves are still fluttering as frayed flags are replaced, and the airport actually has told employees, be delicate with your conversations with Canadian travelers. They may not want to hear your American views. So no joking about the 51st state. Local tourism authorities have urged that. No chatting amongst staff about how nice it would be to get to Canadian Tire without a passport. Less Canadian customers over here. So the reason this is happening is because the county stretches around the northeastern corner of Maine and home to nearly half of the state's points of entry with Canada. And they're hoping to find the new language to reassure Canadian neighbors, some of them family relations, some of them friends, longtime customers crossing into the United States to shop, to keep going to the U.S. As you said, there's still businesses and people there that aren't the president of the United States. Local businesses depend on customers from neighboring New Brunswick, and they say that sales have fallen by a quarter, with April and May land crossings into Maine down nearly a third from last year. Also, an interesting fact, Canadian students at local universities switched to online courses rather than risk what they're writing as the intense border scrutiny.
Yeah, it's so interesting for anybody sort of saying, oh, I don't know if this Buy Canadian move is sort of fading away. The travel move, not traveling to the US, that is sticking. Like, those are huge numbers. And they were talking about one meat producer or meat seller where they went from about 30% of their business being Canadian to, I believe, 8%, which is just so huge. But don't you find it interesting? It talks in the article about, like you said, spokespeople are saying, don't talk politics, don't talk about the U.S. And at first I was kind of wondering, what person at the airport just randomly rants about politics? But then I think probably Canadians are participating in that too. Like, I bet people go through the airport and they're like, oh, I can't believe what's happening in the US, eh? And they kind of get people into those conversations. And maybe that's why they're saying avoid talking about politics at all costs.
Yep, the airport's a place where you definitely can rant, but it's also I think it's more so the customer service conversation. So it's, welcome to the US. Thanks for coming, thanks for doing this, instead of like, ugh, sorry about the tariffs, sorry about this, because it's not their fault. The airport didn't put the tariffs on things. The question, though, is what turn of phrase can soothe the economic pain of businesses are struggling to cope with
Mm.
punishing new tariffs, or at the very least, dramatic new uncertainty? And the article also asks, can anyone find a way to speak louder than Donald Trump? Which is a good question.
It is a good question. It's so important to remember. And we have this too in Canada. We this huge division between like what's happening at the federal level and the provincial level, or in their case, the state. And just remembering, there's still people, they're still our neighbors. They still want us. Interesting article from the Globe. I want to quickly talk about the next article about pet insurance, because I feel like people always know there's going to be some level of medical care for their pets. They just don't know to what extent.
That's true. It's a lifestyle article titled Pet Insurance Has Grown in Popularity. Is It Worth It? By Julia Stratton. I would say that in personal experience, I have looked at pet insurance. Little Oscar is 13 now. So I looked at it when he was a puppy, and I've looked at it now. Pet insurance would do nothing for me and Oscar because he has a lot of chronic issues. So it's kind of, I think an insurance company would look at him and be like, are you kidding? This dog would bankrupt us. So
Yeah.
it's not for everybody, but it does talk about when you should look into insurance, which is when dogs are a puppy, what it entails, what it covers. It's like health insurance for a person, right? Here we are fortunate, or there's lots of choices here for pet insurance now than there was before, but it does tell stories about the amount of money that people are paying to take care of their pets, including one gentleman who paid upward of $50,000 when his pet had to have surgery and then related bills. So it goes deeper into what does pet insurance generally cover, what can you expect, look at the fine print. But I think mainly the thing is, look into it when you first get a pet, because the longer you wait, the less it's probably going to be worth it.
100%. Yeah, it's good article. Really goes into the details. Accident policies only versus sort of disease and illnesses as well, and get it when the pet is young. Corinne, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
That's the Globe and Mail, 10 a.m. Eastern, and repeating every 6 hours on AMI Audio. Just a really quick plug for the AMI Research Panel. We are still looking for folks from the disability community to help shape every decision we make on the channel, especially programming and accessible media accessibility. And you're also compensated for all those long form studies. You can head to ami.ca/panel to join up. Moving from travel here to the environment as we bring on Amy Amantea. Voices of the Walrus airs weekdays at 2 p.m. Eastern on AMI Audio, repeating every 6 hours. And Amy, you've got a good article from the Walrus talking about, as I said, really an essential social staple, flowers, and how some people are joining a sustainability movement to make them a little more palatable to the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, talk about buying green, right? It's buying local. So this article is entitled Rebel with a Vase, which I think is funny because, rebel without a cause, rebel with a cause. So Rebel with a Vase. And it's really about meeting the florists who are taking on big flower. And I think, we probably know that flowers are like practically a staple in our everyday world. You can't walk into a grocery store without coming across, tiers and tiers and tiers of flowers wrapped in cellophane and that are ready for you to grab for a special occasion. Or you can't go to a wedding function that has that's not populated with more flowers than you've ever, experienced in your lifetime. Some of them are really exotic, and you wonder to yourself, maybe, if you're even conscious about thinking about it, Grant, because most people probably don't. How you're able to buy a flower like a chrysanthemum in November because they're not in season, right? Or get these really exotic flowers in Canada that we don't grow. So This article is really talking about some of that and how florists are taking back charge and changing the way they provide flowers to consumers in a more sustainable local kind of way.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because there's this irony with flowers. I feel like if someone was buying you a wedding ring, and they went to Walmart and there's just this one specific style that everybody just bought for everybody, I wouldn't really feel that special. But with the consumer flowers that so many people buy, it's just always the same or similar arrangements produced in very mass quantities from like all over the place. So the sustainability movement here, getting seasonal local flowers arranged very I guess arranged in a very unique way based on what flowers are available. Do you think that's more special as well as sustainable?
Yeah, absolutely. I had never really thought about this idea of these, flower shops, these big chains that were the, 1-800 buy flowers or whatever they are,
Mm.
where you can, go online or whatever and pick a bouquet, and that bouquet is going to be the same whether you buy it in Vancouver or Montreal or Toronto or wherever you are. How they all have access to the same flowers to make the same, call it like a stock bouquet of flowers, right? But that's the model that you kind of need to have in order to make that price regulated so that they're the same price everywhere and that the customer knows what they're going to buy or what they're going to get when they're seeing the picture online. But this idea of saying to a florist, I would just like to have what's in season, please. Create me something for a special birthday or an anniversary or a wedding bouquet. These are my colors. Feels actually really nice to me. Florists are artists. And as an artist myself, I feel like we
Mhm.
don't always give artists the control over making their own art. I make jewelry, and a friend of mine said to me once, "Are you going to put your art jewelry online?" And I said, "Well, I could, but it also means that if I take custom orders, then I don't actually get to practice my own art because I'm taking directions from somebody who says, I want this and this and this and this and this. And they're very specific and prescribed that I don't get to be artistically free. If somebody just said, my favorite colors are pink and white, do what you will, that's fantastic, right? But if somebody says something very specific, like I only want rose quartz and I only want pearls and I only
Mm.
want it to be 16 inches long and I only want, right? Then you're like, okay, well, I'm limited to those things. So I think the thing works the
That's
same with flowers.
Yeah, that's totally fair. It's about sort of knowing the person's story that you're kind of knowing a little bit about who you're designing for and what kind of occasion it is versus like I would like it to look exactly this sort of way. Can you just do the
Yeah.
formula that I'm asking for? That's not really what an artist should be doing.
Yeah. And these artists that are
Um
doing these sort of more sustainable flower shops, these physical retail shops, when you get to the end of the week and you're sold out of flowers, you're sold out of flowers. That's it. Right. There isn't this sort of same refrigerated model where you've got flowers continuously coming to sort of air quotes prove that they're fresh to the rest of the world, that kind of thing. This is once they're sold, and that's how it works.
I really dig the sustainable sort of packaging aspect as well. Don't use
Hmm.
not using that foam to hold up the flowers as it's microplastic, it breaks down and gets into the water. But using really creative technology like chicken wire. I really dig this, Amy.
Yeah.
This is so cool. I'm gonna look for these the next time
Me too.
I next time I have
Next time we
someone
have
to
a
buy
need to buy flowers. Yeah.
Amy, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Grant. I appreciate it.
That is The Walrus, airing weekdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, repeating every 6 hours on AMI Audio. Coming up at 12 p.m. Eastern on AMI Audio and repeating every 6 hours is Double Tap, our very popular technology show. Stephen Scott joins us today to talk about making technology a little more accessible to seniors. Stephen, well, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Grant. How are you today? You all right?
I am doing fantastic. Stephen, I've noticed that a lot more seniors are embracing technology, I guess because it's one of the best ways to keep in touch with your grandkids, whatever it is. But we cannot deny how just overwhelming it can be. And this is really cool about the article you're bringing on the show today, making it a little less overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, what's cool about any technology is when you can use it for good, right? You can use it to help other people. And, a lot of technology, a lot of apps are generally focused around the individual the app is pointing at, i.e., ourselves. But what Uber has done here, and Uber, maybe not the company you would immediately think of as coming to the aid of many older people, but actually it's introducing new features that allow family members to help Uber connect with older people. So let's say your mum or your dad are wanting to come and visit you and you want to send a car to them. Well, before you could do that, but it was a little bit tricky
Mhm.
because they weren't getting any information. You weren't getting much information, or perhaps you were getting all the information. You were having to manage the entire trip, tell them the car was outside, tell them what car they need to get into. Whereas now, you can actually have your family members connect with their own app, and then you can add them to your own family profile. And then you can use your own card, your own information to arrange a car for them. That car can then go pick up that individual, but then they can also see on their app who the car is or what the car is, who the driver is, where they will be. And you can actually use the app in a really cool way to connect and share the experience of Uber with someone else. The other benefit here is that you can have on the older person's side or the senior person's side, and I say this as if it's
Mhm.
exclusive to seniors. I think there's a lot of us who could benefit from this, and that is a more simplified interface with Uber. So less buttons to press, much more control over the app, but in a really simplified way, larger text, larger buttons. So for people with low vision as well, I think there's a real benefit here with this simplified view. And then you're able to get in and order your Uber on your own if you wish to. But again, that can be either through a family profile, so someone can do this for you, or you can do it yourself in a more simplified view. So it's two really cool features coming to help Canadian seniors.
It's a really cool concept. Again, I just think it's so easy if you're someone who whips around that Uber app, no problem, lickety split. Imagine just how incredibly overwhelming either Uber Eats, even or the Uber app for ordering rides. How overwhelming that would be to someone who's maybe older and just learning it. Like, especially even just convincing people, like, you don't pay cash here anymore. It's just all taken care
Yeah,
of, you
yeah.
know? So I think having this idea that, like, you know what, you're gonna get a nice little alert on your phone about the car, what kind of car it is. Other than that, you don't have to worry about it. That's a really cool idea. Just
Yeah, I
looking at
mean, I think
Uber. Yeah,
yeah, I
go
mean,
ahead.
just to say on that, I think it's important to add as well. This is about offering support, which is fantastic. You can also offer, flexible payment options. So if the individual themselves can't pay or hasn't got the ability
Mhm.
to do that, you can do that through your own family payment card. You can set that up in the app. You can also have family members, as I was saying, actually, book the rides. But the other cool thing is that
Mm.
family members can even contact the Uber driver if needed. So let's think about, for example, someone who has dementia who, maybe a
Mm.
family member and you want to get them safely from A to B, you can now have some control in that journey. You can also contact the driver. You can see that person traveling from A to B on your phone so you know they get there safely. These are really cool features.
Yeah, again, all I can say is just fantastic because just thinking
Yeah.
about people that I know who have dementia or have known who have dementia, I mean, just getting in and out of the car, it would just be overwhelming, let alone all the stuff that you now don't have to worry about. Just really quick, Stephen, I'm curious, how are you finding Uber these days? Do you find it's getting a little difficult to navigate, or are you okay with it lately? I'm finding it a little more overwhelming than I'd like.
Well, yeah, there's one issue I've always had with Uber, which is the map, because I obviously can't see the
Mm.
map. So I've never really understand when it says pick me up at some location. If I don't know the area, I don't really know if I'm picking the right one. What I tend to do is just pick one and then call the driver. And, that's one thing I can do is contact the driver. I can message them through the app or I can actually just call them directly. And that often works pretty well. I find the app is okay. I find it's lost some
Mhm.
features. I remember being in Amsterdam once, and I don't know why in Amsterdam in particular it seemed to work, but it gave me a lot more information about not just the car's arrival, like literally down to the feet, how far away it was, telling me like 20, 30, 30, 20, 10, it's here. When I was in the car, it was giving me information about the journey en route, like how long it would take me to get to my destination. It even told me what side of the car to get out of safely to avoid cyclists. I mean,
That's
that
really
was
helpful.
incredible. I haven't seen that anywhere else.
Well-
So I think it may have lost a few features along the way, or perhaps it's country specific.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep looking out for that. I've seen the meters, the distance, but not all that other information. Thanks, Stephen. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks, Grant. Have a good day.
That's Double Tap, our accessible tech show weekdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, repeating every 6 hours on AMI Audio. From tech to U.S. politics, we've got the Washington Post airing at 11 a.m. Eastern on AMI Audio. Mike Ross joins us to talk about the U.S. Supreme Court and kind of a delicate balance with the politics surrounding the Supreme Court. Mike, welcome to the show, and what have you got for us today?
Well, this is an opinion piece all about the Democrats and their relationship with the Supreme Court. And they're walking a bit of a tightrope act here right now, because on the one hand, they feel that the Supreme Court, which of course is packed with conservatives after Donald Trump and his last term, he managed to basically swing the Supreme Court to a conservative majority. And now, they've managed to rule on things like Roe v. Wade and abortion rights in the United States, among other things, and thus giving conservatives a lot of wins in the U.S. and progressives a lot of losses. And the Democrats are trying to find a way here, on the one hand, to push back on Donald Trump and his current sets of moves, for example, against immigrants, really pushing the bounds of law. 300 lawsuits have been filed against the Trump administration so far in this term. So the Democrats are heavily involved in a lot of those. And they feel like, on the one hand, they need to use the Supreme Court to fight Donald Trump. But at the same time, there's a faction, if you will, in the Democratic Party that spends its time attacking the Supreme Court and the fact that it's so conservative, and calling it corrupt and saying that they're doing the bidding of Donald Trump. So this opinion piece is kind of interesting in that it basically says, listen, you can't have it both ways. You can't have your cake and eat it too. If you're going to criticize them and say they're corrupt, you can't also then turn around and ask them to support you and expect them to back you in fighting Donald Trump. So really, it's a piece here inviting the Democrats to reimagine, rethink, and reevaluate their approach to dealing with the Supreme Court and their strategy in using the Supreme Court in legal battles.
It's just an impossible situation, isn't it? Because on the one hand, we're justifiably complaining that Supreme Court decisions are being ignored or misconstrued or not being followed. But on the other hand, wouldn't you want that to happen if you don't think they're a legitimate court? There's no easy answer to this, is there? It's just an impossible riddle.
Well, here's the thing, right? I mean, on the one hand, they're very, very openly, or at least a wing of the party is very openly criticizing the Supreme Court and calling them corrupt and saying that they're simply puppets of Donald Trump. They're just an extension of the executive branch, which, of course, it's not supposed to be. The judicial branch is one of the three co-equal branches of government in the U.S. system. So they're not supposed to necessarily be working in conjunction with each other, although of course, the court can always see eye to eye with a president, but they're not supposed to be working in cahoots with an administration. And that's what some Democrats feel is happening. And yet at the same time, as they're calling these people corrupt, they on the flip side of this coin is they're asking this court to please help us push back on Donald Trump and the things that he's doing wrong and try and see things our way. And essentially, it's just more chaos, if you will, for the Democratic Party, because this is a party that's had a very, very hard time with messaging in election cycles and really establishing for the public, the voting public, just who they are. What is their brand? What do they stand for? And, for a long, long time, the Supreme Court was more left leaning, and that brand no longer applies to the Supreme Court. And the Democrats are having a hard time sort of navigating things here as far as their dealings with the upper court.
Not that your relationship with the Supreme Court should matter for getting the outcomes or decisions you want, but we can sort of assume it does matter to some extent, and that relationship between the Democrats and the Supreme Court is very fraught. It's an interesting opinion piece. Definitely check that out on the Washington Post. Mike, it's always a pleasure having you on the show.
Look forward to talking to you tomorrow.
And likewise. Thanks. Washington Post at 11 a.m. Eastern, repeating every 6 hours on AMI Audio. That is going to do it for the digest today. We will be back tomorrow. If you are listening on AMI Audio, you're going to hear the Pulse in just a second. If not, you can check out the Pulse on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. We're taking a look back at some of our favorite shows this summer, and today you're going to be hearing a assistive technology panel about practical applications of assistive technology and the impact it's had on our lives with myself, Jacob Szymanski. You're also going to have the hosts of Double Tap joining us as well, and some of our other folks from AMI. That's coming up here in just a second on The Pulse. Thank you so much for listening to the AMI Audio Digest.